Hi, I'm Chris Birch. I'm the founder and creative director of Modiphius Entertainment, which is a tabletop games company based here in London. I first got into games when I was 8, and I think my mum was sick of me hanging around the house and told my brother to take me off to a regular night he was doing with some friends where they were playing this game called Dungeons and Dragons. So they dragged me off and I died on the first night as a first level character, but obviously something hooked me and I was back every week and soon found love for that tabletop game. Found a game called Ogre, a little hex-based war game in a knitting shop with my mum one weekend, and basically quickly became a kind of broadly into war games, into sort of fantasy board games and role-playing games. Started a gaming society at college, and then fell into the music industry when I got to London, and I was organising big raves, a thing called Tribal Gathering, which was like 50,000 people in a field. We had big names like The Prodigy and the Chemical Brothers and Left Field and all sorts of people playing for us, and I was doing all the marketing and promotion and shouting at DJs at 9 a.m. in a field somewhere. So, but I'd always been a gamer, and with a good friend of mine, we wrote a game called Star Blazer Adventures, which was published by Cubicle 7 eventually, and spent our 20s dreaming up gaming universes as you do over pizzas and Diet Coke into the wee hours, and one of the universe actually was called Modiphius, which is how this company got our name. It was a kind of alien created solar system, and we always talked about starting a games company, so it seemed like a great name to start with. And so after I sort of worked in the music business, I started a video game clothing company called Joystick Junkies, which did all sorts of cool clothing like Atari and a lot of the Midway games like Defender and Space Invaders, etc. And after I'd been doing that for about 13 years, I met my wife Rita, and we were looking at, I was bored of the t-shirts. I was kind of like, didn't really know where I was going to go with all of that. And I kind of went back to what my childhood love was, which was tanks and soldiers and role-playing games and board games. And whilst I was doing the clothing company, I dreamed up this universe called Achtung, Cthulhu, which is basically the Nazis are trying to partner with ancient gods and demons to win the war, and the heroes of the Allies are fighting a secret war to try and stop them. It was inspired by my childhood love for comics like Weird War and Sergeant Rock, which I would read avidly every weekend. I'd go and help my granddad in a bookstore in Coventry Indoor Market, and that kind of gave me this basis for demon-possessed tiger tanks and G.I. Joes fighting hordes of zombies. Then I discovered H.P. Lovecraft and the Mountains of Madness, which was a fantastic story about explorers discovering an ancient city in Antarctica, and then something sparked and I thought, what if there were Nazis there too? And so Achtung Cthulhu was born, which was our first big universe, and that led to our first Kickstarter that launched Modiphius.
I say, chaps, I'm glad you could all make it. Now, I want to draw your attention to this poster we've had created. It's a bit of an artistic rendering of this chap called Cthulhu. He's been called in father of bother for our chaps in the front line and the boffins back at home.
And so we picked up another license, Mutant Chronicles, which, if you don't know, was a competitor to Games Workshop in the 90s, was this sort of epic far future universe by a Swedish games company called Target. And so we rebooted it with a new 3rd edition role-playing game and a line of miniatures the year after Achtung Cthulhu with another Kickstarter. And the same company owned the rights to Conan, and so we got talking to them about that. And because we had just done 2 big projects, they agreed and let us take on the rights to Conan as well. And that also led to, at the same time, I was talking to ITV, who owned the rights to Thunderbirds, the old classic kids show I'd always been a fan of. So showed them what we were doing with Conan now and Mutant Chronicles and Achtung Cthulhu, and they were impressed, and we pitched them the idea of a board game. I met Matt Leacock of course, who was famous for the pandemic at the time, and pitched him the idea of a cooperative game. This is a bit like going after a movie director for your film. Like, you know, if you want a good action movie, go after a great action movie director. So we thought who was best for a co-op game, and Matt was obviously number one choice. And he didn't know Thunderbirds, but he said, I'll go home and watch the shows with my kids. So we thought we'd probably hooked him, because as soon as the kids loved it, he would be in, and he was. Thunderbirds, you know, they were just starting to work on the new TV series that's been out by Weta Workshop, and so we were a really good time that we could have such a big hit, and especially with a good board game name like Matt's, and then Conan hit, so that was our next big project. So after Conan came Infinity, which we worked with on with Corvus Belli, because they had such a fantastic big miniatures range, and it was kind of screaming out to have a role-playing story. And all the while I'd been dreaming about some of the really big projects, and I got introduced to Star Trek, to CBS. I'd always been a Star Trek fan, having watched Captain Kirk rock around the universe as a kid. And over the course of about 2 years, we pitched them and cajoled them and eventually convinced them to give us the rights. But of course it was because we could show the quality of work that we did with Thunderbirds and with Conan and Achtung, Cthulhu, etc. So Star Trek happened, and we launched that to a big fanfare as a huge success. And then we used that work to then start talking to Bethesda. I knew them from working in clothing, and we were able to start talking to them about doing a tabletop game. And I pitched them, how about Fallout Warhammer? So and they were like, okay, why not? Sounds fun. And again, so that took about 2 years again to convince them that we could do a good, good product line, to show them what we wanted to do. So these big deals aren't that easy to pull off, as you can imagine. Star Trek didn't want to do it at the beginning. No! They were like, no, we haven't got the time, too small a team. It's too much work. Role-playing games are, so much work. So much work to approve, because it's hundreds of pages of content that you've got to read. And then we lucked out. We found someone, a games writer who was working with Simon & Schuster to edit the Star Trek books, and so we got him to basically read everything, pre-approve it for us as part of the team. So when we send in content, everything is correct. So the worst things we usually get pulled up on is we haven't italicized Enterprise.
But because the Romulans...
something funny like that. So it's the hard work pays off, because you get a good working relationship, and they let you do more. Big universes come with their own challenges versus your own universe. With my own universe, I can create anything I want. Achtung, Cthulhu, we're just creating or adding to the storyline, creating some new adversaries, some new events in the timeline. It's complete freedom up to me. Different universes are a bit different. Star Trek actually embraces fan creation and partners creating new content. So in Star Trek, we've created the Shackleton Expanse, which is a big area of space that was an empty part of the map in the Star Trek universe, and we filled it in, and we've got a whole storyline building there in what you would call beta canon. So it's not alpha, it's not TV shows. I mean, basically, if it's TV shows, that's their kind of prime, or TV shows and films is their prime canon. That's what is official, and then anything beyond that, the beta canon can potentially conflict, although we aim for it not to. And they embrace us creating new worlds, new ships, new peoples. In a world like Fallout and Elder Scrolls, there's so much content. We actually don't need to really create anything. We also have to be careful that, because they see anything that we put into the video game as prime, canon, or they don't want anything conflicting in any of their licensing. So we can't create a new vault, for example, in Fallout. We can create a vault with no name, and it's up to you to decide where it is and create a situation, a scenario. We can create a Vault Tech factory, for example, for a mission that you could place somewhere in the wasteland that you're wargaming in. But what we can't do is place that in a certain town, because what happens if the designers want to do a new DLC or a new game set in that area, and you've now created something there and it's kind of painted them into a corner that they now feel they have to use that. So in one sense it makes it easier to create for, because we have boundaries, we know that what we can and can't do. Whereas with Star Trek it's completely open. It still has to be approved, but as long as it fits the Star Trek universe, and we don't try and claim that we found a new race of heavily armoured space marines who live on a world and want to dominate everyone. Within reason, you can create anything you want that fits the style of the Star Trek universe. So with Elder Scrolls and Fallout, we need to be sensitive to the plans of the designers and create potential and story opportunities within the world. But thankfully, we've got so many potential scenarios for Fallout and Elder Scrolls for the games, so much opportunity for storytelling, and the way we're building the game it lets you tell your own story. Taking on something like Fallout and Elder Scrolls, I realised that there's definitely an audience out there who want to play battles against each other, and there's lots of companies that do that really well. And I think what has been missing is the other side of that, which is the ability to play really strong solo games, really strong AI games. I think if I could pitch for any project, well, obviously Star Wars is a big one, but it's already been done very well. So other things I love the Half-Life games. I played Half-Life and followed Gordon Freeman, and then the cop, the security guard, through the various missions, and that was always a big project for me. So doing something with Half-Life would probably be a dream. I'm already doing Star Trek and Fallout and Elder Scrolls, so we've got so many great projects under our hands. Actually, I want to do more of our own projects. We've got a new project called Dreams and Machines that's launching later this year that we've been working on for some time. So actually having more time to work on our own babies is one big dream.